Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to my channel. My name is Paul, the Canadian Snowman. Hope you guys are having an amazing day. We are on to some more feature history. The first Boer War. I don't know. For some reason, like it reminded me of the Emo War, the emus, whatever. And so I thought this may be something similar, but like when I was searching just for like a photo to throw over here, I didn't see any Boers. So maybe I'm way off, and this has nothing to do with uh, the animal kind of thing. I don't know. I'm probably way off, and I'm gonna look stupid here in a second. I mean, I already do, but anyways, guys, please hit that like and subscribe button below. And yeah, let's just jump into it. Feature history. 3, 2, 1.
By
Bam.
Curiosity Stream. Get 31 days of streaming completely free using the link curiositystream.com/featurehistory, or you can wait till the end to hear more. Hello, or as they say in Afrikaans, hello, and welcome to Feature History, featuring the Boer War. No, not that one, because today, instead of delving into the massive topic that is the Second Boer War, I thought there was some worth in discussing the often overlooked First War and being able to cover all the history that led up to the Anglo-Boer conflicts that we all know of.
Never even heard of the Boer War, so there's actually 2 Boer Wars. Okay, interesting.
And being able to cover all the history that led up to the Anglo-Boer conflicts that we all know of. And then I can do the Second War later on. Gotta keep you guys subscribed for something. So, looking back into history, we can figure out why the British colonised South Africa, why the borders of South Africa look the way they do, and most importantly, why do they speak Dutch? To start doing all that, let me move us all the way back.
Man, I feel like I missed the like an opening video or something, because I didn't know they spoke Dutch, or I probably did. I just forgot, because I've done I've done geography now of South Africa, and I forget 99% of what was told to me. And so the British are involved in this. Okay, I have no idea what's going on, but let's continue.
In the timeline to the 17th century. But briefly before I do that, yes, I know they speak Afrikaans, you can stop writing that comment. And now, let's continue. In the latter half of the 1600s, Europe was firmly in its age of exploration, a time where sailors and settlers ventured to foreign shores and discovered things that had most likely been discovered several times before. In that vein, the Dutch East India Company would begin settling on the Cape Peninsula of southern Africa, establishing the area as the Cape of Good Hope, a resupply station for sailors on their way to the...
I did remember the Cape of Good Hope, because every time someone travels, they have to go past there, and yeah, that's definitely a recognized name. Anyways.
Area as the Cape of Good Hope, a resupply station for sailors on their way to the Dutch East Indies. Skilled farmers would be prompted to sail the months-long voyage to work the land, and so the Cape became a society of farmers, and it just so happens the Dutch word for farmer is Boer. So skipping about a century of the aforementioned farming, it was in 18...
So it's basically the Farmers' War. Okay, I guess the Boer War sounds better than the first Farmers War. Okay, interesting.
So skipping about a century of the aforementioned farming, it was in 1806 that the Netherlands Republic was forcibly incorporated into Napoleon's new empire. And thus the British quickly concluded that Dutch colonies were now free game and set about annexing the lot in the name of securing trade routes in this time of war. That time of war came to its end in 1815, and Britain and her allies established the new Kingdom of Netherlands, which saw all its colonies returned, with the exception of some South American territories and the Cape, which became a permanent part of the British Empire. The 1820s saw British people arriving to the Cape and settling as neighbours to the old Dutch colonists. The Cape Colony was expanded under British campaigns, and so English language and culture was beginning to take over. The 1830s saw basic rights for black Africans and the abolishment of slavery. And the Boers were very uneasy with this rapid social change in their culture and politics. In response, the Boers would undertake the Great Trek in 1835, looking to move into the South African interior and found their homeland separate from British law. And the British let them. The Boers could pioneer the exploration and save their empire the effort.
Hey, you know what's better than a $5,000 PC?
What?
A $5,000 PC that costs $0. It's time to...
So the farmers didn't like the way the British were kind of doing things, and I guess they just had a lot more freedom without the British there, and I guess they decided to take off and continue their farming ways north of the British, right?
With the credit to the conquests and slaughters of Shaka Zulu, large swaths of land were left unpopulated, and so the Boers were able to, with limited resistance from native Africans, establish 3 republics along the Vaal River, Orange River, and Eastern Coast.
Okay, cool.
The coastal Natalia Republic was quickly gobbled up by the British wanting a new port, but for the other 2 republics, the Orange Free State and Transvaal Republic, they would be recognised as independent nations in 1852 through a series of conventions that sought to standardise relations and slavery law. And while that deal managed to stand for some time, it was moving into the 1870s that pressure from other European colonists saw the British government wanting to push for a confederation, as had been seen in Canada between British and French colonies. However, the Boer and even local British colonists were firmly against that. But then, diamonds would be discovered on the borders of the Boer republics, and so Britain would begin encroaching further and further on Boer territory. With the Transvaal government vastly unpopular and facing bankruptcy from costly campaigns against native Africans, the threats mounting from Zulu build-up under King Cetshwayo seemed dire. The British would move soldiers into the area in 1877 and declare the Republic annexed for the sake of its protection. The Boers, not wishing to find themselves in a war on 2 fronts, were confined to passive resistance. The British would use the Transvaal as part of launching their own attack on the Zulu Kingdom in 1879, which saw several embarrassing defeats for the British, but it wasn't long before reinforcements were able to defeat the Zulu. It was then, with the Zulu gone, and passive resistance having done nothing, the Boers began to take up arms. Paul Kruger and several other notable Transvaal Boers would repeatedly point out that the British had violated the conventions of 1852, and in December of 1880 would gather together in a triumvirate and declare the Transvaal Republic once again independent. As part of Boer defence since the 17th century, they had relied on a commando system, and under the triumvirate it would be law. All men between the ages of 16 to 60 were eligible for conscription, and in times of war they would report to their local townships, bringing with them their own horses, arms, and food to last the first couple weeks. Boer society was one based on self-sufficient farmers whose horses and rifles were their lifestyles, and their armies would be no.
So they'd be like a militia kind of thing, right? Everyone just like, hey, everyone who's at this certain age, just grab your horse, grab your rifle, make sure you have enough food, and we'll meet at this meetup spot kind of deal, right? Interesting. So they're not just coming together with pitchforks and stuff, right?
No different. The first news of independence would reach the British in quite a strange way. A convoy of reinforcements en route to Transvaal's capital of Pretoria were met by a small group of Boers who informed them they were marching on sovereign territory, and this would be an act of war. That small group soon turned out to be hundreds of Boers who ambushed the British with accurate fire, and the column was massacred.
Nice.
The many
Wow.
small garrisons of British troops came under.
That's smart, though. I mean, like, sorry, the British, you guys tried to take over a lot of stuff, and, I mean, I'm sure it's not the only place where people wanted to fight back and, like, hey, like, let us, like, have our own, land and leave us alone kind of thing. That's a good plan right there, though.
Under siege from locals, and would be the governor of both the former Boer Natal and Transvaal colonies, Sir George Colley, that sought to counter this rebellion. By January 1881, he had mustered together a relief force, and despite feelings in the British government that this conflict would be best avoided, he marched his soldiers in. Almost immediately, he met an entrenched and outnumbering Boer force at Lang's Neck. With some gusto and artillery fire, cavalry would charge again and again over broken ground and come out on the losing side against accurate and consistent fire. After taking heavy casualties and losing several officers to Boer marksmen, Colley was put on the retreat. The Boers then took up guerrilla tactics and entered the Natal colony, raiding communication and supply lines. Colley rerouted his relief force into an escort and met the Boers at the Battle of Ingogo. Once again outnumbered, and their bright red uniforms nice easy targets for Boer marksmen, the British lost again. By February, it was clear the...
It's like the big change in warfare, right? It's like you gotta get to... Everything's, I guess, after this kind of switches over to more camouflage, the big red coats, I'm sure, like, it looks very intimidating, there's the British, they have, like, a big history and reputation, and so that's going to be pretty intimidating, but yeah, if you're, the small guy trying to take him out, you're not going to fight him head on, so you're going to play guerrilla warfare, and it's pretty easy to play guerrilla warfare when you can see these red coats from miles away, so you have a lot of time to kind of muster up your plane and whatnot. Anyways, the Boers are kicking butt. British, come on, man, you're getting your butts kicked by farmers.
The British lost again. By February, it was clear the government wasn't going to support this war. The Anglo-Zulu War of the past had been costly and unpopular, and the plans for a South African Confederation were already on the cutting floor. It was ordered that hostilities be suspended, and a royal commission would start discussing the terms of withdrawal. But this wasn't going to deter Colley. Instead, the general gathered the few hundred men he still could, and took to Majuba Hill, which he saw as a strategic stronghold over the nearby Boer war camp. Once he had taken the summit, the Boers crept up on the hill, advancing with cover fire tactics, a tactic that rendered traditional volley fire useless. It wasn't long before the British were outflanked and placed on a chaotic rout. The defeat would have been devastating for Colley if it weren't for the fact that he was shot dead. With the main combatant of this war gone and the most humiliating battle in British history written down, the Transvaal would win itself a very favourable treaty. The Pretoria Convention saw British troops withdrawn and the Republic returned its self-governance. The only caveat would be that the Boers accepted the Queen's nominal rule, which only lasted a few years before even that was dropped in the London Convention of 1884. So this short war seems pretty cut and dry. The Boers had won a decisive victory. But that was only for the fact that the British Empire allowed it. It was considered better to accept defeat at a time where the war would have been too costly and the Empire had bigger concerns in India at the time. South Africa wasn't really high on the agenda of British politicians.
Because the British allowed it? Well, obviously, if the British used their full might, they'd take it, but to say they allowed it, I don't know. Because the British have a lot more other, like, bigger fish to fry in their big empire than, down there and, fighting Boers, in South Africa. I mean, the fact that, the Boers gave them a fight and gave them a lot, gave them a big headache, the British government was probably like, let's not deal with these guys, man. They're too much for us. But, like, they allowed it? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, like, I'm sure, I wonder what the people thought, just the regular, like, British citizens. They probably didn't care at all. They're probably like, my sons, my nephews, my family members were dying down there, against farmers. Get them out of there. So I'm sure they probably had, like, a lot of pressure from the homeland, like, to kind of stop that war down there because, I don't know. I think just random. They were just mumbling on about. I don't know where I was going with that, but anyways.
The time. South Africa wasn't really high on the agenda of British politicians, and so the games of government and economy had handicapped the military in this war. The reality of Boer independence is that it lasted only on bought time. More and more interest would pour into Africa as the scramble ramped up. and the beginning of a gold rush in the Transvaal saw the Republic blessed with money, immigrants, and cursed with foreign interest. The First Boer War would be one of the last times that the frontier lifestyle could beat out a colonial and business interest. Entering the 20th century, a second war, a bigger war, was inevitable. And of course, this was nowhere near the first time the world had seen this. In fact, over on Curiosity Stream, you can tune into the series The Butter.
Well, there we go, guys. Obviously, there's more of these Boer wars, but I guess, like I said, the first time like the farmers kind of were able to fight back, a giant nation and whatnot. So, I guess the British. I don't know who's involved in the second one, but I guess a lot more countries are involved. I mean, we have gold and diamonds. I mean, and that's going to attract a lot of outsiders. To come in. Come in and take your land. But anyways, guys, let me know your thoughts below. Hit that like and subscribe button down below. When I first saw the title, I honestly thought it had to do with actual Boers, and then I pulled the pictures up. I was like, okay, this has nothing to do with that, but let's check it out anyway. So that's kind of like my thought process on that. But anyways, guys, peace. Catch you guys in future videos. Like and subscribe, and I am out of here. Woo!